Hi guys, in this video we're going to talk about factoring a trinomial with a leading coefficient other than 1 using guess and check. First, let's talk about multiplying binomials. We have 2x plus 3 times x plus 11. We are trying to multiply these binomials to go from the factored form to the standard form. So we learned that we use double distribution to be able to multiply a binomial by another binomial. And I start my distribution by multiplying 2x times x to get 2x squared. And then multiplying 3 by x to get 3x. After that, I multiply 2x by 11 to get 22x and 3 by 11 to get 33. So now I have an expression where I have two like terms. I have 3x and I have 22x, which I can combine together. 3 plus 22 is 25x. So the two binomials, when I multiply the two binomials, I go from the factored form to the standard form where I have 2x squared plus 25x plus 33. Now, in this video, we're going to learn how to work backward. That means we are going from the standard form to the factored form. So the first thing that I need to do before I start doing this is to make the connection between the two forms and try and find an easy way where I can work backward. So if we look at the standard form, the first number in the trinomial is 2. And 2 is basically the product of the two numbers, the first two numbers in the binomials, 2 and 1. 2 is the product of the first two numbers, 2 and 1. And if you look at the last number that we have in the trinomial, 33, 33 is basically the product of the last numbers in the binomials, 3 and 11. So the last number in the trinomial is basically the product of the last numbers in the binomials, 3 times 11, which is 33. Now, for the middle number. So if we look at the middle number, we'll see that it's basically the sum of the inner product, 3 times 1, and the outer product, which is 2 times 11. So 25 comes from adding 3, because 3 times 1 is 3, and 22, because 2 times 11 is 22. So we're going to use this information to be able to work backward, going from the standard form to the factored form when we have a trinomial with a leading coefficient rather than 1 or other than 1. Okay, let's take a look at this trinomial where we have 3x squared minus 2x minus 8. And I'm trying to factor this trinomial to go from the standard form to the factored form. So I'm going to have to come up with two binomials. If I multiply, I get this trinomial. So in the first question, we found out that the first number in the trinomial is basically the product of the first numbers in the binomials. So I have to think of two numbers. If I multiply, I get 3. And the first two numbers that comes to mind and has a product of 3 is 3 times 1. So I'm going to use these two numbers as my first numbers in the binomials, 3x and 1x. And for the last numbers in the binomials, we said that the last number in the trinomial, which is -8, is basically the product of these two numbers. And again, we're going to have to do a lot of guessing and checking to be able to find these two numbers. First thing I can think of to be able to find to come up with these two numbers is a negative 4 and 2. I'm going to use these two numbers first and find out if these two numbers are going to work or not, because negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. So I'm going to do my check now because I did my guess. Now I'm going to do my check. I have 3x minus 4 and 1x plus 2. And now when I multiply negative 4 by 1, I get negative 4 as the inner product. And when I multiply 3 by 2, I get 6 as the outer product. When I add negative 4 to 6, I get 2. If you look in the if you look at the middle number in the trinomial, we have negative 2, which means that the sum of the products needs to be negative 2. So in this case, I'm close, but I have a positive 2 instead of negative 2. So that means that the first choice is not going to work. And I have to think of two other numbers. I know that I'm missing a negative sign. So this time, maybe I can change the sign of the numbers and find out if they're going to work or not. So instead of 4, I'm going to use, instead of negative 4, I'm going to use 4. And instead of 2, I'm going to use negative 2, because 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Now I need to do my check. So I have 3x plus 4 and 1x minus 2. Now, when I multiply the inner numbers, 4 and 1, I get 4. And when I multiply the outer numbers, I get 3 times negative 2, which is negative 6. Now, when I add 4 to negative 6, I get negative 2, which is exactly what I want to have. So this tells me that the two numbers or the last numbers in the binomials are going to be 4 and negative 2. Now let's think about this question. We have 5x squared minus 9x plus 4, and I'm trying to factor this trinomial into the factored form. So the first thing or the first method that should come to mind when I try and factor is using GCF. And looking at this trinomial, I do not see any common factor between the terms in the trinomial, which means that GCF is not going to work. The second method that comes to mind is using TOPS and the difference of perfect squares. And since I don't have a binomial, I have a trinomial, TOPS is not going to work. And the last method that I have now to be able to factor this trinomial is guess and check. And to be able to find out if it's going to be an easy guess and check or not, I have to ask myself, what is the leading coefficient? And in this case, the leading coefficient is greater than 1, which is 5. And that means that I'm going to have to do a lot of guessing and checking to be able to factor this trinomial. So I'm going from the standard form to the factored form. I know that the first two numbers in the binomials is going to have a product of 5. So I need to think of two numbers. If I multiply, I get 5. And the two numbers that I can think of right now is 5 and 1. So I'm going to use 5 and 1 as my first numbers in the binomials, 5x and 1x. Now, I know that the last number in the trinomial is 4. That means I have to think of two numbers. If I multiply, I get 4 as my last numbers in the binomials. So in here, I'm going to do a lot of guessing and checking to find out what the two numbers are. The first two numbers that comes to mind is 2 and 2 because 2 times 2 equals 4. Now, this is my first guess. I'm going to do the check to find out if I'm correct or not. So I'm going to set up my binomials. I have 5x plus 2 and 1x plus 2. So now when I multiply the inner numbers, 2 times 1, I get 2. And the outer numbers, 5 times 2 is 10. And add these products, 2 plus 10, I get 12. And since I'm so far off from what I need, 2 and 2 are not a good guess for this trinomial. So I'm going to have to think about other numbers that can have a product of 4. So this time I'm going to try -4, and I'm going to try, 4 and 1, because 4 times 1 is 4. So this is my second guess. So I'm going to have to set up the binomials again to find out if my guess is correct or not. So I'm going to have 5x plus 4 and 1x plus 1. Now, the inner product is 4 times 1, which is 4, and the outer product is 5 times 1, which is 5. Now, when I add 4 to 5, I get 9. So the sum is 9, but if we look at the middle number in the trinomial, the sum is -9. So that means I have the 9, but um, I'm missing the negative sign. So I'm close, but not correct. So my second guess is not a good guess as well. I'm going to have to think of other two numbers. And since I'm missing the negative sign, I'm just going to change the signs of these two factors. I'm going to use -4 and -1 because -4 times -1 is 4. So I'm going to guess again. Check again to find out if I'm correct or not. I have 5x minus 4 and 1x minus 1. So now when I multiply -4 times 1, I get -4. And when I multiply 5 times -1, I get -5. So now when I add -4 to -5, I get -9, which is exactly what I need. So the two factors that will work is -4 and -1. So now back in the factors, I can put 5x minus 4 and x minus 1.